behind the lines, there are three places you would attack. You would attack the telegraph lines, of course. You would attack the roads that go through valleys. And especially you would attack the mountain passes. Mountain passes are essential. Because again, I told you it's something of a military history class. Mountain passes are what are called force multipliers. Which means if you have 1,000 men against 1,000 men, it's pretty even. But you can also be even if you have only 100 men, but you're in a mountain pass. You can use a mountain pass to defend because it's very hard to attack into the pass. You have mountains on both sides, you have boulders, you have things you can hide your artillery pieces, and the mountain passes look, as you can see, like places where you could easily defend. This is, you can't see it perfectly, but this is the Couture Pass. This is one of the passes I just showed you. And as you can see, these are mountains here, mountains here, mountains here. Couture, which is in Iran, is over here, and Sarai is over here. The Ottomans had put fortifications in these passes. They had put fortifications that would allow them to hold up the Russian troops who tried to get through. There's a problem. The problem is that a mountain pass is a force multiplier against attackers coming this way. You get all your guns ready, you get everything set up, you make your fortifications, the Russians are going to attack this way and you're going to stop them, right? But it doesn't work if you get attacked from behind. The Ottomans actually were attacked not from the Russian direction, but from two directions. Behind, they were attacked by the Armenians. And in the Vaughan Rebellion, in this area, they were attacked so much so that the Ottoman forces were defeated by the Armenians a number of times. In the province of Vaughan, the areas in which the Armenian rebellion took place happened to also be areas on the mountains, on the telegraph lines, and in the roads that go through the hills. We're especially concerned about the mountain passes in this case, because in these areas, it was the place where the Russians were going to get through and ultimately defeat the Ottoman Empire. For instance, if you take the Sarai Couture area in here, Armenians came not simply from the Ottoman Empire, but also from Iran. They were so many and so powerful that they attacked the Ottoman forces and they defeated them. Not the Russians we're talking about here. The Armenians by themselves managed to defeat the Ottoman forces protecting these passes. More than 400 Ottoman soldiers died in the defeat by the Armenians in December of 1914. It's often said, of course, that these Armenians were only defending themselves. The problem is, as I said before, they weren't in an area where they were either attacked or there were very many of them to begin with. In the Sarai Couture area, only 5% of the population was Armenian. In fact, in order to defeat the Ottomans, they had to bring Armenians from all over, concentrate them under military authority, and then attack the Ottoman government. So this wasn't a case of a popular uprising. This was a case of a military action by Armenians to help the Russians attack the Turks. In many areas, you have the same kind of thing going on. For instance, Bashkali-Dur, the area that's down here, or over here, the area here, the Armenians rose up and helped the Russians enter the area. And when the Russians came in places like Bashkali and Dir, the Armenians, along with the Cossacks, slaughtered every single Muslim man, woman, and child in the area, except, of course, those who could escape. Slaughtered every single one. Some got away, and then he didn't. And of course, it must be said that when the Russians were initially defeated by the Ottomans, when the Ottomans managed to drive them out of Bashkali and Dir, and some Armenians were left behind, the villagers, the Muslim villagers came through, and then they killed all the Armenians that were there. It's not always simply a one-way story by any means. Also, as we're going to see, these are very important areas for the cutting of communications lines. There's another area, well, the area of Havasor, Yavash, and all the way over here. As you can see, this is where the road is, but it's also where the telegraph line is that goes there. This is an area that was particularly dangerous to the Muslims. It was particularly dangerous because the roads could be cut very easily by low hills, low mountains that came right up to the road. And anybody moving along that road could be caught between the lake and the hills. This road, of course, was cut again and again. The telegraph lines were cut so often that many times they couldn't be used for weeks at a time. But it was most important because when the Turks were defeated, as we'll see in a minute, when the Turks were defeated and all the villagers started to try to get away, most of them had to go through this road. Or sometimes some of them by foot went down this road here. And these were the places there were like the killing fields. There were places in which people were killed in such tremendous numbers and that the blood was just everywhere. I don't want to go into those kinds of details, but this is a place of real horror, a place that was really horrible, in which the guerrillas attacked the local Muslims. This area is called Karchikan, which seems like a very funny name to me. I've never figured out how Karchikan could possibly be, but this is the name of the area that's in that. And as you can see, it's an area with mountains and the lake, and it's an area where it's very difficult for people to get by. As a matter of fact, when the Ottomans had to retreat along this area, their army was held up, tremendously held up, by the fact that the Ottoman civilians, the Muslim civilians who were retreating along these roads, were being attacked in such numbers that the Ottomans, instead of regrouping, had to leave their soldiers behind to protect the civilians. Of course, this is what was intended. It's intended that the soldiers not be able to fight against the Russians, but instead have to defend the civilians against the Armenians. The regions then were needed for supply, needed for communication, needed for retreat. And these, of course, were the very places that the Armenians attacked. And that was because they were acting as agents of the Russian army. If you look at the Bomb Rebellion, once again, you're going to notice certain specific things about the places in which the Armenians rebelled. What I want to talk about especially is communications, because as I said, that was essential to the Ottoman army. The communications, the telegraph lines that went along this way, we don't know much about the details of what happened. We only know that they were cut and they never came back again. They never were successfully brought back. But we do know that these communications lines to the south were cut again, and they were put back, and they were cut, and they were put back, and armies were sent to whole, divisions, battalions were sent to deal with this. We know that that was the case. But we know that there is a limited number of ways that you could communicate. The Russians are here. You have to communicate two ways. You have to communicate to the north with the Third Army Command, which is in Erzincan and sometimes in Erzurum. And you have to communicate, of course, with Istanbul, with the Central Command, to tell them what's happening and to tell them what you need, soldiers, supplies, and of course, get your orders. That's what has to be done. In order to do that, there are only a few ways that you can do it at all. One of them is, as I said, along here. If that doesn't work, the only other way you can communicate is by messenger. Telegraph lines come down to Chatak. You then have to have somebody on foot, on a donkey, or on a horse, carry the telegram across the Sirk, and then have it sent on to Diyarbakir. Or, if you want to go straight south, you can go down to Neyri, down Bashkali to Neyri, and then once again by messenger or by foot, you can go down to Rwanda's and down to Mosul and Baghdad ultimately. This map doesn't show you, but I want to stress, anyone who's ever been to Hakkari, anyone who's ever been to southeastern Anatolia will know, I'm not talking about a superhighway here, I'm talking about up and down the mountains. So if you want to stop the Ottomans from communicating, if you want to stop them from doing it, where would you attack?